Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dillon. I'm your host. And guys, so moving forward, we're going to have a brand new show for you, basically. It's going to be a brand new show. And still a Construction Corner podcast, but the change in format is going to be one that I hope all of you are going to thoroughly enjoy. So we're going to have a co-host, Matt Vetter, who was previously on the show. So if you want to go back and listen to the episode I did with Matt, learn all about his story, what he's doing at Schaefer Construction, you can go and check all of his stuff out. But moving forward, Matt, you're going to be our new co-host. So welcome to the Construction Corner podcast.
Dylan, thank you. I'm super excited, man. This is going to be fun, and I'm excited to see where this takes us. It's going to be kind of a neat yin and yang with you being on the design engineering side and me being on the construction side. So here we go.
Which is why I think it'll work out really well.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, all right, guys, today, Matt and I, we've been, we hear things that are going on in the world. You've probably got some crazy stuff that's going on in your job sites, let alone the rest of the world. But we wanted to kind of open up, it's going to be a little bit of a can of worms, but we think it's important. And the thing that we want to talk about today is stress, stress management, and coping with stress, as the construction industry is one of the biggest for suicides, which we'll do another like mental health show at some point in specifics for construction. But in coping with stress is kind of the big topic that we wanted to talk about today, and how it applies to you in your life and how we can help. Matt, I'll let you kind of start it here on maybe ways that you've been dealing with stress here lately. Like what's some of the tactics that you've dealt with just in your, let's just say, personal life first, and then we can dive into the job site side of it.
Yeah. So, personally, there's all kinds of stuff to be stressed out about these days. Coming off of the last almost 11 months of the strangest new world that I could ever imagine with COVID, to everything going on in politics and potentials with the economy. I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed and to let some of this stuff build up, and it can build up to an unhealthy point real quickly, and it's relevant today, it's relevant tomorrow. I think it'll, there's always going to be something, but I think we need to kind of pick apart how to break it down and at least limit the effects, personally first, and then outside in our peer groups, in our business groups, employee groups, or whatever it may be. I think it's incredibly important to get it to the surface.
Yeah, and it's a super good point, right? You got to be able to control yourself first, right? Your own internal dialogue, what you're consuming, what you're kind of breeding, if you will, within you. And because a lot of that, let's just say that things aren't good at home, right? Like you're having, and this, I mean, again, these are tips, like we're talking about like a COVID world, virtual, whatever. But this applies really in any time, any decade, anything at all, that if you're having, let's say, problems at home, like maybe your kids are acting out, or you're just have marital problem, or whatever it might be, that tends to bleed over into the rest of your life, right? So if you have problems at home and then you go to a job site and somebody says something to you and it didn't come off super good, you're probably going to react poorly to that thing. So first and foremost, get your own house in order, right? Figure out your own personal stuff. Why are you reacting to things poorly? What's wrong in your life? Are you going down too many like rabbit holes, for lack of or internet black holes, Wikipedia loops, whatever that might be for you? Are you going down too many of those? And that just, puts you in a bad headspace. And it takes some awareness to go through that. But I think that's the first and most important thing before we get to like the job site and how you react to other people.
For sure. And I think at the end of the day, those personal sides of it are probably the easier ones to fix in most cases. You know, if you're having a problem with your spouse, well, work it out. You know, communicate more. If you're having problems with your kids, figure out what's going on. The Wikipedia and the internet rabbit holes, that stuff's just not healthy. You know, I'm guilty of it just as much as anybody else from time to time, but I've really tried to segregate myself away from some of the chaos out there for the last couple months at least, because it'll eat you alive if you spend too much time on it. So I guess I think that, you know, those sort of things are pretty easy, or easier at least, to control in a way, and to, at least to start making it better for yourself.
Which then leads to the job site. And one of the things that I always came across is and this goes to both sides of the fence, that you feel you got to respond immediately, right? You feel you have to respond quickly, everything's in a rush, in a hurry, and you might send something off without thinking through it. And that causes undue stress, and like, I got to respond, and you're, like a junkie, right? Trying to send that email, right? Respond to that thing, have inbox zero. And that just causes a lot of anxiety when, it's more than likely like an hour is going to be okay, right? Like, you were in a meeting and probably didn't even see most of those emails. Nobody, like, you weren't worried. If they really needed you, they'll call you. But even then, it can take some time. So I guess, Matt, for how you deal with this on the, since you're on job sites more often than I am these days, um, what are some of those maybe job site approaches to, like, one, email? I think that's probably the biggest one.
Email's huge, and that's a really hard one for me personally, because, you know, as an owner, I spend a lot of my time in my office, and so I'm always in front of the email. It's real easy to get wrapped up in, as soon as your computer dings, to go and quit whatever you're working on, immediately go find the email. And but you kind of nailed it. If it's really that important that it can't wait an hour or even half a day, somebody's going to call me. And if it's critically important and I don't answer my phone, they're going to call me again, and they're going to call me again. And frankly, that's one of the rules I have with my kids and my wife, is that, I don't answer my phone all of the time when they call me during the day. But if anything's ever wrong, call me again, and keep calling. And if I see my phone going nuts, I'm going to pick it up pretty soon. So, but I guess back to my point of the email, getting on the job sites for me is difficult, because I'm there. I want to be engaged with my superintendents, with the subs, with everybody there, and checking out progress and whatnot. But I find myself all the time doing the one-handed dance with my phone, trying to type and answer emails as I'm walking around a job site, which isn't the best example to set from a safety perspective, but it also just isn't necessary. But it's so easy to fall trap to that. There's nothing. I've never received an email that was of such grave importance that it couldn't have waited. But to try and teach yourself that, and discipline yourself to do that is pretty difficult, I think, especially this day and age. I'm a little older than you, but I'm still of the mindset where, when I came up through school originally, in high school, we didn't have all of this. And as I've grown professionally, we've had email, we've had smartphones, all this neat stuff in our day, but I've seen kind of both sides of it. And sometimes it makes me wonder, maybe we have a little too much.
And I think that comes to, so there's a few things that were really good in there. One was safety, right? And paying attention to the thing in front of you, which also leads into productivity, right? Like, if you're focused on the thing in front of you, you're going to do a great job on that. You're not going to have to come back to it. And that also means that you're, on the job site, you're going to be safe. So you're going to work in a safe, aware manner of the thing that you're doing, which again allows you to do it right the first time and not have to come back to it. So I think, again, it's focus, it's clarity of thought, it's being present where you are and aware, especially on a job site, of everything that's going on around you. If you're looking at your phone, or lost somewhere else, right? Not focused on what you're doing. There's a lot of things that can happen, in an instant, especially on a job site.
Yeah,
So,
and
oh, go ahead.
I'm personally guilty of, if I see guys doing what I just said I do all the time, I'll call them out for it. You know, this last summer we had an instance where one of our iron workers was walking around on a roof. He wasn't clipped in, and he was on his cell phone. And I kind of poked my superintendent and said, somebody needs to handle this now, because otherwise I'm going to handle it, and it doesn't usually end well that way. But stuff like that we can't have. It, to think of the disaster that could happen in a blink of an eye by being so foolish as to be texting or checking an email on a rooftop. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, and I mean,
We just need to police it.
yeah, recently in the news, I don't know if you saw this. It was on Construction Dive that a, I think he was a steel worker at SoFi, the new stadium there in LA.
Yeah.
Which they have a super cool new like jumbotron. Have you
Yep.
seen that? Yeah,
Yes, it's pretty wild.
huge. It's like an oval that's, I think it's 10 yards wider on each side of the field, 4K each side. Big Oculus. Um, but they had a guy that was working at SoFi. I don't know if he obviously wasn't clipped in, but fell off the roof and died at SoFi. So it's stuff like that where, luckily those are getting fewer and fewer these days than some of the construction projects of
Yes.
years past. But I mean, they still can happen.
Yeah, and it always makes me kind of smile and wonder at the same time when you see those old pictures of the guys, building New York City, the black and whites, and there's, 15 guys sitting up on an I-beam 300 some feet in the air eating lunch with no ropes, no harnesses, no nothing. To see where we've come to today, and while when injuries and incidents happen, they're terrible, but like you mentioned, luckily they seem to be fewer and farther between.
Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of this in dealing with stress is the topic of the day, right? And coping with stress, but it's also a lot of stress is self-induced, frankly. By trying to respond to email, by trying to do too much at once. And I get it, right? There's a lot of projects, a lot of people that want stuff, they want it now. But more than likely they don't need it now. And a lot of that they say ASAP, but and this might be the question to ask: when do you really need it? When are you going to use this information? Is it in 2 days? Okay, can I get it to you tomorrow or in 2 days? And I think that it's not necessarily pushback, but those pointed questions aren't always asked to see when people actually need information.
Definitely. And again, I keep throwing myself under the bus, but I see myself doing this with my guys, with my employees a lot. I'll, especially come end of the month when I'm working on invoicing and monthly reporting, I'll fire off an email and I'll sit here counting the seconds. Like, well, when am I going to get my answer? I need this now. Realistically, I probably have a few days before I actually need it. But I've kind of trained myself in my head, well, this is important to me, so it's got to be important to everybody else, even though it really isn't. I need my guys realistically to be focusing on what they're doing and producing and building buildings. So there's definitely there's some give and take to it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember in like receiving emails, especially like after hours. There was one one owner that we worked for in a hospital system that he had very odd like hours that he worked. So he managed all the construction for this hospital system and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stuff. But he would work kind of in the mornings, and then like the afternoons he'd spend it with his kids, right? He'd go to all their stuff. So from about like 2-3 o'clock to probably 6 was like a dead zone for him because he was with family. But then you would get emails from him at like 9 and 10 o'clock or 2 in the morning, right? That's just when he was working and going through stuff. But it was convenient for him, but he didn't expect a response 2 a.m. It was just when he was working through stuff. So it's to
Yeah.
remember that a lot of people are they have different work hours, they have different times, they have different things that they work through stuff, and they're sending that email out because it's on their mind. It needs to get done, and it's just a checklist for them. But for you, again, like when do they need that information? You can respond, probably within a day works for most people. And it's a timely response to everybody so that you can, move on with everything else. But just kind of understand, especially like off hours emails, it's somebody thinking about it, right? They finally got to it. They've been in meetings all day and they just needed to send it so that it didn't get forgotten about. Um, but it isn't for you to respond to immediately. They're by and large not looking for a response, tonight.
That's exactly right. And it's hilarious because I do that. My days get swallowed up with meetings, and I get scatterbrained. My best ideas come when I'm in the shower. So if I don't remember it again, it'll never happen. And I can always tell who our newest employees are because I'll start rattling off emails at 10 o'clock at night sometimes. And by no means do I want them looked at or thought about until the next morning. But all of a sudden I start getting responses from somebody. I'm like, oh boy, now I feel bad because I'm taking away from their family time. But sometimes it's just a brain dump for me. Get it out of my head now because if I don't, by the time I wake up in the morning, there's a whole new list of stuff going on and I'll never remember. But it's certainly it's amusing to see when you start getting the responses.
Yeah, and I think that's, for everybody out there, it's to remember, like, in corresponding with your teams to like let them know, right? Like you can put in a PS in there, like, hey, PS, you don't need to respond to this right now, right? Like it's okay. Or just getting this out of my head, that type of stuff. To just let everybody know, like, hey, answer this eventually if it needs an answer. But it could be just like, I need to get this out. We'll talk about
Yeah.
this like on Monday or whenever.
Yeah, and I've told my guys, all of our employees that after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, don't respond to anything from me. Don't even look at your phone. If I need you, I know how to get a hold of you. And if there's a building on fire, I'll get a hold of you, and it won't be through email. That's for sure. So just put it down and unplug. And um, that's kind of one of the best coping methods I've found. I think when dealing with job-related stress, especially, is just you gotta force that unplug, and I force it on our employees at Schaefer Construction. I don't force it on myself as much as I should, but it makes a huge difference when you can pick a time, whatever time that may be, and just turn the phone off, shut the laptop, engage with your family or a book or a TV, whatever it is you need to do, but put the work out of your head because it'll still be there regardless in the morning.
Yeah, and for most of us, listening, right, leadership roles and management roles, we're paid more to think than we are to do, right? And if your stress is, or if you're stressed, you're anxious, you're not thinking clearly, right? You're going a million different directions, then your thinking mechanism, the thing that you're ultimately really paid for, right? And thinking of new ideas, ways to execute, what the team needs to do, strategy, plan, all that stuff moving forward, you're not going to be as effective at what you do, not going to be as great at it, which means you're going to be less likely for a promotion or the next thing that you're looking for. But ultimately, like people in management positions, you're paid to think, right? You're not paid to necessarily swing a hammer or bend pipe or dig a ditch, right? Not to say that you can't, but you're paid to think. So all that being said, like reducing the stress increases your creativity muscle, right? It allows you to just daydream about stuff. So like for you, Matt, as an owner, right? I am too. Like we think about our business all the time, but it's in what's next in a creative space, not necessarily in like what emails do we need to send, even though I'm sure that that comes up too. But it's always in a more creative function. And I think and the more that we're in that, right, has there ever been a time that you've been creative and just pissed off? Like it doesn't happen, right?
Probably not creative in the right way anyways. You don't come up with the best outcomes when you start thinking and you're angry to begin with. you know I think in business too, especially from the ownership side, some stress is good. I want to make that really clear too. I think that if I lived a completely quote unquote stress free existence, I'd be bored to tears. I like the chaos of construction. And I've been doing it for a long time now. And, I kind of thrive off of that lack of monotony, I guess. So I think, stress is not always a bad thing. You just have to be able to control it. And you don't want to get to the point where you're so stressed out that you can't really think clearly anymore. You just want enough stress just to keep you kind of in the game and engaged. So you're not just, walking around in the clouds.
Yeah, and with experience comes a lot of like knowing it'll work out, right? Like you have the solutions, it'll work out. And a lot of the, especially when I was younger in the field, like, the world was ending, right? If we couldn't solve this thing and do it now, when,
Totally.
in reality, somebody's got a lot of work to do to fix whatever is probably wrong. So you could take a day, right, and think of a solution, especially if
That's,
something's screwed up.
yeah, you just nailed it. 90% of what I do is solve problems. And I've come to learn and to truly believe in that, like you just said, there is always an option. There's always an answer. There's always a solution. And you may not like it. It may sting. In construction, there's problems that come up and mistakes made that they sting really bad to the bottom line. But there's always a solution. There's a way to fix it. The world's not going to end. But yeah, as a young guy out in the field swinging a hammer, and if I framed a whole wall incorrectly or used the wrong size nails, which I have done a time or two in my early days, it seems like that's it. I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna be homeless and poor and not have any friends for the rest of my life. But you get your bumps and your bruises through experience, and I'm at a place now in my career where you just got to kind of shake it off. There's nothing worth getting real excited about anymore, and excited in a bad way. There's nothing worth getting pissed off about.
Yeah,
Not
I heard
much.
this phrase maybe a few months ago now, but so apt to construction. You gotta care, but not that much, right? Like you gotta
I like it.
care, but not that much, right? Like you gotta care about, doing the right thing and putting your best foot forward. But for a lot of us, the ultimate decision is up to the building owner, right? It's out of our hands. All you can do is present the best options you can and then let it go, right? Relinquish the quote unquote outcome. It's okay, here's the choice. Now we move forward, right? So you care to present options that are good options either way, or just, here's the pros and cons of whatever we're presenting. Like, hey, this is going to cost you a lot more. This one's quicker and cheaper, dirtier, right? Whatever. And then just you put them on the table, and it's ultimately not your choice for the most part, right? All you can do is present the options. So you got to care, but not that much.
For sure. And that's actually a strategy that I started using because, like we've talked about before, I'm really heavily rooted in the pre-construction side and estimating and sales. And you know, at some point, you got to realize that I'm not the one making up prices for a job. I'm not the one who is making a project cost what it costs. All I'm doing is compiling information, putting the appropriate data to it, and then showing you here's what it is. Here's option A. Here's option B. I'm just a delivery agent at that point in time. And if you can actually convince yourself that, it makes the selling side a lot easier, I think.
And it's to remove your own financial bias, right? So we all have a innate financial bias, right? But this is the whole thing in like making sure your own house is stable. So if $5,000 is a lot to you personally, and you're building a $20 million building, and you get a $5,000 change order, it's not that big a deal, right? That's a rounding error on that project. you know. Now, obviously, they add up over time. So again, you got to care, but like not that much. It's not worth digging tooth and nail on a. And I've seen it. I've been there. Fighting over $1,000 change order. It's like we wasted more time dealing with this change order than it's worth.
Definitely. We see that all the time. And it doesn't matter if it's a $20 million project or a $200,000 project. And you just got to weigh your options and weigh the intrinsic costs of what you're actually looking at, because those are usually worth a lot more than the change order itself. If it's somebody screw up, if a subcontractor screwed up and missed something, our goal is we're going to try and help them. We don't want those guys to eat it. Usually, I mean, there's certain circumstances that come up, and you got to do what you got to do. But in the subcontractor world, especially, we're GCs, so we have a lot of stress. We have a lot under our plate or on our plates to manage, but we're not putting out that giant capital stack that our subcontractors are. Those guys are the ones that they buy out a project in the very beginning, and they're fronting for all the material, all the metal studs, all the drywall, all the screws and everything. So in a weird way, I mean, believe me, I don't like losing money. I like making money as much as the next guy, but it almost hurts them worse, the subcontractors, because they're already so extended. So we have a little bit of leeway to help with that, usually, as long as the pre-con guy's done his job right and things are set up appropriately. So we write our fair share of change orders, and we back charge when it's appropriate, but at the same time we always try and use that team mentality and help them out if we can.
And this is a very, very important point for everybody. So on the engineering side, especially architects too, that you're dealing with subs primarily, right? That's who you're. Granted, everything goes through the GC, but you're dealing with I deal with the electrical contractor, right? When I'm on projects, the architects probably dealing with the wall and ceiling and door contractors, right? That's who they're, or masonry. Yep. Or whatever. And so knowing that, okay, this change order, that comes through and reviewing it, and it all goes to stress and how you manage this. I know we're getting into some weeds here, but if you're going to worry about that thing or tie this guy up, now this sub is going to be super stressed out, because now they probably already did a bunch of work. So they put out a bunch more labor. They had to pay their people. They're out, probably at least 60, if not 90 or 120 days on, their stuff, right? Just in billing cycle. They bought the material, they did the work, now they're getting paid on a 90-day cycle from the time they purchase material. Yep. To the time they're getting paid. I mean, that's just how it works. So they're already, at 100 days. Like, think if you didn't get a paycheck for 100 days and now you're holding it up more because you don't want to, review this, or you want additional whatever. And not to say that they need to have their paperwork in order, they for sure do, and cost justification or whatever, but understand on especially smaller dollar amounts, that can mean a lot to that contractor, or they're getting held up on pay for, another 30 days because that's a pay cycle. It's not they're going to get paid in 10 days. That's not how it works. They're going to get paid on another 30. And this is a thing primarily on the design side, nobody understands these pay contracts. And for sure, I didn't, working in a firm, because it's not something we ever dealt with. And I think there's just a big disconnect on the dollars and how these approvals need to happen. Because again, you're not getting paid on the 15th, right? It's another 30-day pay cycle to make that happen. So if you go past the end of pay apps, right, it rolls to the next one. It doesn't just get amended on the last one. So it's always something to think about.
Yeah, because it's.
Go ahead.
It's way different than residential in that sense, right? Residential, you could always go to a homeowner and say, hey man, look, I missed the boat on my invoice. I know it's only the 10th, but can you cut me a check? And as long as you got a good relationship, you'll probably be okay. we're dealing with corporate entities or municipalities who have, bylaws and ordinances on how these things work. They literally can't just cut a check whenever they feel like it. So, we're sticklers for that, for paperwork, and it's got to be it to us by this date, and we send our invoices by this date. And if you miss that boat, I don't feel bad for you then. I can't help you. But as long as we all work together and you get your stuff in order, it usually works pretty smoothly.
Yeah. Again, it's just like one of those other, stress points is the finances and the money to make sure that, everybody, like, for most everybody, right? Like Matt and I aren't on this train anymore, but you're getting a paycheck, right? You're getting a consistent, steady paycheck, and you don't have to worry about like any of that stuff. But as owners, it's a different ballgame, right? You worry about cash flow. You worry about, did we invoice correctly, or we get receivables in on time, all this stuff. So it very much matters. And again, like I know most of you are disconnected from this, but it'd be like, think about not getting a paycheck for 3 months, but still working,
Yeah.
right? You still got to go to work. You still got to pay your bills. You still got to put gas in your car, but you don't have a paycheck for 3 months.
And you still got to be efficient, and you still got to like what you're doing, and you still got to keep producing. And it's a tough road to hoe sometimes. And you kind of hit it. The stress that we deal with on the owner side is a whole different type of stress than the stress on the field side. It all can add up to unhealthy levels in the same kind of mechanism, but there's very, very different stressors that we face, or that I face certainly, in the office versus what the guys out in the field are seeing. So you got to be able to have that healthy balance between all of them.
Yeah, and it's not to say that one is better or worse than the other, right? Stress is stress in the body. It manifests pretty much all the same. So with this, guys, like, understand, like, you can feel it, right? You can feel it in your body on what's causing stress. You can see, or maybe you can't see, but people around you can see, like, if you're drinking more than you should, right? You're taking more painkillers than you probably should be, right? Or whatever that might be for you. You're coping in other ways that isn't healthy or is outside of your, let's say, just norm. So kind of check that, right? See how you feel. Are you just like anxious and, like tingly too much, right? Like where you're just like shaky and you're like coming through withdrawals because you don't have your phone or something on you, right? Like we all know those feelings, and not to get too touchy feely in this, but like you within yourself when those things occur, right? When you're not focused, when your mind is somewhere else, right? And just to give yourself a gut check. But yeah, going for a walk, getting outside, doing things that you enjoy, right? Watch a good movie, watch some comedy. Those are all things to like help deal with stress in whatever form you might be dealing with it in.
And you also got to remember that it's not taboo to talk about it. I try and chat with my guys frequently, and make sure, I do those personal gut checks on them, because you can learn a lot about how somebody's doing internally in a quick conversation, especially once you know somebody pretty well. We talk frequently, and that's a lot of times what my goal is. Hey, are you okay? Is this working out for you? Are you pulling your hair out? I've got a superintendent right now who's in the home stretch of a project, and we always kind of laugh because on the front end of the project is where the project manager, or in this case me, is going crazy. Now you've got 60 days to buy a project out and see how bad things really got screwed up in the estimate. Well, on the flip side, now my guy's in that home stretch. He's got 60 days to get this thing done, handing the keys over to the owner. And in this case, it's not a horrible contract that we're up against, but mentally, in his case, it's a horrible contract we're up against. So he's killing himself, figuratively out there every day. And I know he is, but we got to have those talks and chats, and sometimes I'll force them off the job. I'll just say, just that's it. You're doing a great job, but go home, get out of here, go take a half a day or whatever it needs to be, and go get your head straight. You still got to have fun.
Yeah, and you'll find, if you've ever gone on vacation, right, the days leading up to it are probably some of the most productive you've ever had. And then like, the office didn't burn down when you were on vacation for a week, right? It's still there when you came back.
Yes, it's still there in a pile of emails too.
And again, but like nobody, right? Like they knew you were on vacation. They either dealt with it or didn't, and then you can answer them, right? And then bulk emailing, it probably takes you an hour to go through all that stuff and find everything versus, it would have taken you 4 hours because you would have been checking email, then distracted, and then checking email and distracted on the next thing. So it's probably more efficient to just bulk go through emails, right? Sit down at one point and blow through them all than it is to, you know, check
Yep,
every 10 minutes. And you'll feel better about it.
definitely. And you will. And vacation and time away from the job, time, just relaxing with your family or friends or whomever it's so important. Personally, I just got to a point where I was even able, both financially and mentally, to unplug for even a couple days. Um, it's been really difficult to walk away from a project in years past. And, I'm finally kind of over that hump, I think, at least mentally, where, I can take a week, a year, or whatever it needs to be and leave. And I have enough confidence in my team that stuff is still going to be moving forward. Nothing is burnt to the ground too bad. And, we built a team, we hire competent people, and we all have skills and confidence in each other. And, you know, once you get there, then yeah, you can walk away. And just getting away from the day to day, it erases stress. I mean, I don't know how it can't. Get to a beach or go for a skiing vacation or whatever you're into, and give yourself some time to unwind, and then you come back better for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things to do, right? And it's whatever you love, whether that's fishing, hiking, skiing, mountain biking. I mean, there's a ton of things to do, and just as simple as getting outside, right? Leave your phone in the house and take a walk, for half an hour does wonders.
Yeah, definitely. Exercise too. That I found it really helps me personally, anyways. And you know, I uh, I think we've both done 75 hard. I think you might be doing it again, but 75 hard is a program, for those who don't know, that Andy Frisella kind of spearheaded, came up with. But I won't go through all of it, but it involves a lot of exercise, a lot of self-induced exercise. But going through that and forcing myself this summer to get in that routine, it has been tremendously helpful for me. And you know, do I like waking up at 4:30 in the morning and going down to my home gym? Absolutely not. I hate it. But I feel fantastic when I'm done, and I know, it's just such a stress killer and confidence booster that I think everybody should do that. And it's hard, especially for the guys that go and work manual labor all day, to explain that to them, like, well, I know you're out beating yourself up all day long, but you should really hit the gym afterwards or before. You'll feel a lot better. And I do think it's the truth, though.
I remember years ago, it was my first job out of college. This was probably a year into the job, and I had my first like solo um, trip, basically. So I'd been kind of sort of lead, but this was my first time like going alone, doing all the data collection. So we did arc flash studies. So we were going into industrial plants, and this was in Columbia, Missouri, and it was an automotive plant. So they made parts for different cars. So they were a supply chain for car parts in different ways and sorts. And the electrician that I was working for, or working with, he was just jacked. Dude was huge. And part of that, like, so as an electrician, right, you're depending on the day, working on a lot of stuff, or like you fixed everything and you're good sitting around drinking coffee. But which is in a plant situation was what you want, right? You don't, your guys are sitting drinking coffee, that means you're making money and nothing's broken.
Yeah.
A little different than in construction, but with that, like, I mean, and dude was just huge. But what he was saying is like, I feel so much better. And this was before, like, I mean, years before. So this is like 10 years ago. So this was before like 75 Hard came out or any of these programs. It was, like going to the gym was kind of sort of something people maybe did. And I was just like, I feel so much better, like going and lifting and, you know, eating right. Like it just, I feel better. I was like, oh, it's cool, man. Like, awesome, good for you, right? And this was like when I didn't know any better, and now like, I run stupid distances and all this other stuff that, and again, it doesn't have to be like going and lifting like 400-pound, deadlifts or bench presses or squats. Like again, a simple 30-minute walk on flat ground does wonders.
Definitely. Absolutely. And I grew up the same way. All the meatheads, it never made sense to me. Like, why would you go and spend all this time in the gym? And, I'm no big buff superstar by any means, but I get it now. And I make a point to take that time for myself. And that's really the key, I think, too, is taking the time for yourself. Whether it's just walking, whether it's doing that crazy nonsense you do and running for hundreds of miles, or or just going to the gym, you just take some time for yourself, every day, and every little bit you do helps.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like I know guys that go fishing, right? Like just sit there and cast the line for an hour, right? Like it doesn't have to be like we're
Yeah.
not talking anything crazy here, right? It's something to just take you away from everything that's going on. Well, Matt, I guess, any other points that you want to add here on some ways to cope with stress, and then I'll give us a wrap up.
Um, I think it's just important to talk about. I think it's just something to keep on top of mind. You can't ignore it because it won't go away. It's not specific to our industry by any means, but we surely have a lot of it in construction and in all facets of construction, from design to all the way through to building. And just acknowledging it is a big step in the right direction. And as long as we keep talking about it, and people keep taking care of themselves, I think we'll all be better for it.
Yeah, I mean, guys, this is a big topic. I mean, it hits close to home for me. Like I got shingles from projects, which is completely stress induced. So to me, like this hits home. I've um, known of guys, not so some of the guys that I've worked with had heart attacks. Um, so one of my bosses did, one of the guys under me did, one of the other guys on that team before I came to the department, like had a stroke. Like I've seen it, been around it, experienced it, right? Like I didn't have a heart attack or stroke, but shingles is still pretty bad, pretty painful, and it lasts for like 10 days. So it's one of these things that it's super real. People, manifest it in different ways, whether it's they're drinking too much, their body is fighting back and with heart attacks, which is, an extreme example. Um, strokes, not eating right, getting too much takeout, whatever. So learning how to relinquish this and not worry about sending that next email. Don't worry about, like, you need to do it. I'm not saying don't, but I'm saying like it can wait. You can put it to the side. Nothing's gonna catch on fire, right? It's gonna be okay. And the more that you can kind of have that feeling in those are the people that last a long time in this industry. They're even keeled. They don't, like they'll get to it, they'll get done. They don't worry about it. And those are the people that last a long time in this industry. So, if you want to last, if you want to stay in construction, those are the types of things that you're going to have to do to survive and not only survive, but to thrive within the industry. You don't get phased by much. It's okay. You'll survive. You'll get to it when it happens. And, it's all going to work out in the end.
Absolutely. You still got to have fun in life.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. So again, with stress, talk about it, to Matt's point, talk about it, understand that it exists. It's a real thing, and you need to find ways to manage it the best you can, especially in construction. And don't be afraid to talk about it, whether that's with people on your team, your spouse, friends outside the industry, and maybe have a, little more lax job, whatever it is, right? Find ways to deal with it, go fishing, take a walk. It's all going to be okay. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, guys, is so next week, the 26th here of January, we're going to do a LinkedIn live construction tech roundtable. So we're going to have, I'm hosting the roundtable. We're going to have people from all different walks of construction talk construction tech. So some of the industry leaders. We're going to have somebody from NICA, somebody from the Wall and Ceiling Association. We're going to have a couple of subcontractors, architect, another GC, and talk everything construction tech. So you'll want to tune in. It's going to be noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It'll be live on LinkedIn. Other platforms are TBD at this point, but we'll for sure be live on LinkedIn. And we'll get that out to you. So again, if you're not following me or Matt on LinkedIn, all of our links are in the bio here. So you can tune into that next week, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on LinkedIn. Matt, anything else you want to add to close us out for your first co-hosting, second appearance on the podcast?
First show, man. This was fun, and I want to promise everybody that not every episode is going to be this heavy. We're gonna have a lot of fun too, and get into all things construction. And I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you brought me on board, and I appreciate the heck out of it.
Yeah, for sure, man. And then like moving forward, guys, too, we'll do some of our own roundtables here on the podcast. It's going to be, a little more, let's say, talk show type moving forward. Matt and I might have some solo episodes moving forward too. Some of the similar things that you've seen, but definitely going to be more of a roundtable conversations from tech to subs to specific things on job sites to design. I mean, we'll cover the gamut, and you're going to get hopefully a fair and balanced overview here with somebody on the design side and on the GC side.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
So guys, that's going to be this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. We got so many great things here ahead of us moving forward. So we'll see you and talk to you guys next time.